and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from Revolution Brewing Company out of Chicago, Illinois. I don't honestly remember, I've done so many beers now that I don't remember every brewer. If I reviewed one of these, it couldn't have been more than one or two, and it would have been years ago. I did get this one from Tavour, and the beer in question today is called Maintains and Shapes. Kind of an interesting name. This is effectively an India Pale Lager. On the back of the can it says Illinois Recreational Lager. It's a 5.5% ABV. They did use kind of a Pilsner malt base, but it's hopped like an IPA. So it's a lager format, hopped like an IPA. So India Pale Lager is probably realistically the best categorization for it. The specific hops in question today are Zappa, Strata, and experimental hop number 0692. So we've got some big hops here. Don't know what their purported IBUs are, so we'll have to figure that out when we jump in. But I always love, of course, a nice hoppy beer, and IPLs are great. I wish that you could get more of them more readily. They're not super hard to find, but you know, you get that nice crispness like you get from a traditional lager with a hoppy, you know, forward nature that you get from an IPA. You know, it's just the lager variant. It's great. I'm a big fan. In terms of label art, kind of interesting. It's got some eyes. I'll try to get that as close to the camera as I can. I don't know how to describe it, but it's pretty cool. Looks like hand-drawn art. So yeah, I'm expecting this to be not too dissimilar from kind of the cold IPA we recently reviewed, where it's kind of a hybrid between an IPA looking for like the easy drinkability of a lager. Yeah, I mean, that's a good branch version, you know, of what IPLs that have been around for a few years now are kind of all about. So I got this cracked. Ooh, very active in terms of carbonation. Let's just get that poured right in the glass. Smells very hoppy already. I can already smell the hops. Smells like a very nice beer. Now that I've got that first bit that wanted to come right out of the can, I'm going to open that mouth a little wider so we can get this poured properly. There we go. Stop it right about there. Yeah, no problem forming a head on this one. Visually, yeah, it's you know, it's kind of a classic typical lager color, or roughly the color of a Pilsner, which makes sense since they are using an underpinning of different Pilsner malts, traditional Pilsner malts. So yeah, I mean, some IPAs as well are in this lighter territory. Of course, when you're doing an IPA, you can use any number of different malts. There's not so much a set in stone traditional variety, though you will typically have some more kind of caramel type malts. Typically somebody's going to at least use like a Carapils. That would be pretty prototypical, but not typically in a lager. So yeah, it is a bit of a hybrid style. It's, you know, all of the aspects of a lager that lager drinkers like, plus the hop forward nature of an IPA that IPA drinkers like. So you get that easy drinkability and crispness of a lager, but still get your hop fix on. That's the beauty of this substyle. Yeah, formed a very nice head, very tight, champagne-like carbonation rising up. I can see it. The head does look quite creamy, quite foamy. Let's get over this for a full sniff. Oh yeah, wow, yeah. That smells really nice. So on this one, I'm getting kind of a mix of tropical fruit. It's kind of putting me in a pineapple and passion fruit kind of vibe in tandem with citrus. It's kind of got an orangey, grapefruit, lemony vibe. That's the two main aromas. And then just underneath in the background, there is a little bit of kind of an earthy aroma to it as well. So we've got quite a mix here. In terms of the underlying malt bill, I'm not really detecting anything on the nose. It's really driven heavily by these hops, and it smells absolutely fantastic. So head is holding true, guys. This looks great. It smells great. We're going to jump right in. Take one. Oh, yeah. That's a very nice beer. Okay, see immediately, this is, on first sip, just reminds me why I really enjoy the whole IPL formula here, the India Pale Lager, if you want to call it. So, body and mouthfeel, let's just start there. It's 5.5%. It's kind of a medium light body. It doesn't feel heavy or oppressive. It feels appropriate for the ABV. Right on the money, I would say. In terms of mouthfeel, very similar story. It's not super viscous, but it's got the right amount of resistance to it. This one does get extremely velvety, silky when you agitate around the palate, but it's not super thick. So it doesn't really linger and cling all over the palate. But the fact that it is using, a heavier hand with hops definitely is making a big flavor impact and lingering far longer than your average Pilsner would be, to be certain. So this is definitely its own animal. It's kind of a hybrid of a few different styles, and it's really nice. It's got that classic, light, refreshing crispness you get from a lager with the hop intensity and profiles that you get from an IPA. I mean, that's what IPLs are all about, and this is a very, very good one. I gotta say, in general, this is maybe a bit more hop dominant, a bit more hop forward, a bit more bitter forward than your average IPL, at least compared to those I've had over the years. This one does lean quite strongly into that hop aspect of the beer. That said, it does not detract at all from the lighter, refreshing, kind of crisp profile that you typically find on a lager, which this is, of course. So yeah, it really is kind of the best of both worlds. You get the nice traits from a lager plus the nice traits from an IPA, and you put them into the same beer. It's a recipe for success. It's just a winning beer style. I really do like them. So on this one, in terms of the overall kind of flavor profile that pops, you do get a very noticeable hop bite up front. I would say, to my palate, it tastes somewhere around the 50 to 60-ish IBU mark. They were not shy with extracting alpha acids out of these hop varieties that they put in there. So yeah, it does have a more pronounced hop bittering profile than your average lager would be, certainly more than a Pilsner, if you're using that as comparison, since they used classic Pilsner malts in this beer. But yeah, it's very nice. And in terms of kind of the hop profiles that come through, it's very much leading with an earthy bittering underneath. There's slight suggestions, slight twinges of pine, and there's a little bit of that kind of citrus rind, citrus oil kind of bittering in there as well, with only underlying subtleties of kind of fruit accents. And it is mostly citrus in this one. It does taste kind of like a mix of grapefruit and orange. But very, very nice beer. I'm going to jump back in for a second sip. We'll let everything re-intensify. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. Take two. Yeah, it's got this nice, clean crispness up front that you get in tandem with the bitters. It does lead with earthy bitters as it kind of settles down with the first rush of intensity of flavor coming from the malt bill and the hops. That's when the bitter intensity slowly starts to rise a bit over time. So you start with this very clean, grainy, almost granola-like kind of malt bill underneath with earthy hops riding on top. And up front is really where you get the first kind of suggestion of any subtle fruitiness, and it does lean more dominant on kind of citrus notes, but it's very much leading with an earthy and kind of citrus oil, citrus rind, and slight twinges of pine as the main kind of hop flavor profiles that are making this way into the beer, and certainly on the bittering profiles. But then it kind of settles down. The bitter intensity rises a little bit, but it doesn't get over the top. It's not a Stone Ruination IPA. We'll put it that way. But it's very, very nice. So really what you get on this on the aroma profile does more or less translate into the glass. And a beer like this, when we're examining the balance, it's the balance of the malts that they use and, of course, the hops that they use. I would say the balance on this is fantastic. It's got enough hop presence, both aroma and flavor profile, as well as all of the bittering agents. And you can still taste the underlying malt bill, which gives it kind of that lager back that you're kind of craving if you want that lighter, more refreshing side of the beer style. It's very nice. Everything has its own voice. It's very clear. I really, really like the balance on this beer. In terms of the finish, this has a much longer than average finish for a lager in general, and certainly for comparison's sake to most IPLs I've had. Indeed, this has a longer finish than a lot of IPAs I've had. Certainly much longer than a New England style. And it's because it does lean bit more heavily into kind of the bittering side. That is what is going to drive out the length of the finish. It's going to be coming from the hops, and that is true in this case. And what you're left with on the back end for the hops, it is very much lingering earthy bitters with a little bit of that kind of pine twinge. That's what's left on the end. But compared to typical lagers, this is not one that ends up with any kind of drying effect at all, at least on my palate. It does feel very wet and very round, though it still feels crisp because it's got that lighter body, it's got that lighter texture. So it's overall a very nice beer that I think kind of splits the difference between people that are craving, two different styles of beer. It's kind of the hybrid, the best of both worlds. And this is a very, very well done example here, guys. I am a big fan of this beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come with my scores. When we come back, we will get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Revolution Brewing Company's Maintains and Shapes, an India Pale Lager that clocked in at 5.5% ABV. Revolution Brewing is based in Chicago, Illinois. So guys, this was a really, really great beer. It's been a while since I've done an IPL, and as soon as I took my first sip, I was immediately reminded of why this is a style I love so much. It bridges two completely different styles into one kind of hybrid style. You get all of that hop aroma and flavor and bitter bite that I love from an IPA with the lighter, easier drinking, kind of crisp qualities you get from a lager. It really is the best of both worlds. If you're a fan of lagers and also IPAs and you've yet to try an IPL, you've got to get your hands on them. They're not that hard to find. I did get this one from Tavour. So, going through the scores, guys, this beer almost swept it in all categories. Only a single category that did not get a perfect score, and that was on the finish. And the finish on this beer was exceptionally long. Much, much longer than your average IPL that I've had. And I've probably had 20, 30, 40 of them by now. And this one really, what extended it out was that it wasn't a dry finish like you do get on some IPLs, but also the lingering hop bitter intensity on this beer in particular is what drove it out. It was very impressive. It was delicious all the way to the end of each sip. That was well in excess of a minute, pushing a minute and a half. That for an IPL is very, very long. And this beer did get a 9 out of 10 for the finish. That does, of course, leave a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 9 categories. That's aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, head and retention, appearance, balance, my subjective thoughts category, and example of style. So the total score on Revolution Brewing's Maintains and Shapes is, of course, a 99 out of 100. Guys, near as far as a perfect beer is to call it a perfect beer. It really only missed top marks on the finish by a hair. I have had some that were a little longer. This one, yeah, really quite nice. The hop profile in particular, and the fact that it wasn't dry on the back really did help the cause there. And it was just a delicious beer from top to bottom. Smelled amazing, looked amazing, had a great head. It tasted delicious. The bitters were front and center, had a really nice underpinning malt bill. This was just a top beer, guys. If you like IPLs, this is one you absolutely want to keep on your radar. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications by hitting that bell icon. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.